Hi.
Hey, Luke.
Hi, how you going?
Good. Just putting on the co-host. There we go. And I'll put you on mute. There we go. Excellent. Today I'm joined by Gary Buckenara. Gary is a premiership winning football player, AFL football player, a man that's had an extraordinary life and has an extraordinary tale to share with us, both one of great highs in his career, but also some of the challenges that come in post-football life and overcoming those, which he's been brave enough to share publicly. And you can see online the kind of caliber of his character. So Gary, thanks so much for sharing your life with us today.
Thanks, Chris. Yeah, it's nice to be with you, and and hopefully we can get a message out there that mental health. It's not a weakness; it's an illness, and we've got to firstly address it for ourselves, so we can accept that you do have a problem, and talking about it does help.
So tell me, if we go back and if I look at your biography, it seems like you had, a real sporting talents from a very young age. It was a part of your life. Take us back there. What was life like growing up? What was the flavour of your life then?
Yeah, look, I lived in a suburb in Western Australia, in Perth. Lived in a suburb called Doubleview, which is very close to Scarborough Beach. So beach life was in the summer was always something we did, but I just love both AFL footy and cricket. And so in footy season during the winter, I was always playing footy, and in the summer, we were always having a hit of the cricket ball, whether it be a backyard test with your brothers and mates, or whether it was in the nets or playing on Saturdays or Sundays whenever we played. So very active lifestyle. Sport played a very big part of it. And as my life grew, obviously, my first love probably was cricket over football. And then, as I grew a bit and developed physically, footy sort of then took over. And, I was pretty blessed to have a wonderful career.
Did you, in those early days, did you think that this would be a career for you, or was it sort of something that you were having fun with? Did you have that ambition early on?
Well, not footy-wise. I had more ambition with cricket because I played first grade district cricket as a 17-year-old. So I was fairly young, and I played against, the stars like Dennis Lilly and Rod Marsh, and played with some great players as well at Scarborough Cricket Club. And so I had more ambition about representing Australia as a cricketer. And I played footy, from the years of 18 or right through. I started playing when I was 10, but in teams, I played amateurs, and I played E-grade amateurs when I was 18, 19, 20. 3 years just with my mates, and I was concentrating on cricket, and then it turned around. I started dominating footy and grew a bit, and I had my local club Subiaco knocking on my door to try out, so I went and did it, and from there it was unbelievable how quickly it escalated for me. Playing E-grade amateurs 1 year, and then playing league football for Subiaco, and then 6 games into that career at Subiaco, I was selected in the stateside to play for Western Australia, and then every AFL club wanted to sign me up. So it was, it was a bit of a dream come true, really. We all dream as kids. We all think, when you're kicking the ball down the park, you just dream of, that you imagine being that league footballer, so or test cricket player, whatever it may be.
And in those early days, did you, have a sense of the kind of mental illness or challenges you'd have later in your life, or was it a time in your life that without that at all, and it sort of was something that came later?
It was something that came later, Chris. I had a really good grow. youth, when growing up, you know, we had lots of fun, had great mates. You know, we made our own fun. We didn't have computer games, mobile phones, all these sort of things, technology that they have today. So we had to be very inventive with our fun, you know, and a lot of it was just playing sport and playing mess around games. And yeah, so it was a very active sporting life. And really, it wasn't until and mental health back those days, there was really nothing really known about it. And really, it was toughen up, you know, toughen up, you know, you're not feeling happy, but, you know, everyone doesn't feel happy. But, you know, as we've got to know mental illness, it can take people to very dangerous places. And, you know, I got to that particular point in time, you know, after, you know, a lot of people would say to me, you know, you played in 5 grand finals with Hawthorn, you won 4 of them, you won all these individual award, team of the centuries and all of that. You've lived a blessed life. And it unbeknownst to me, there were things that happened along my journey while I was playing for Hawthorn that deeply affected me. And I was one of those types that sort of said, toughen up yourself. You know, what's wrong with you? You know, you've got this great life and you've had achieved all these great things, yet you wake up every day feeling unhappy, and you just can't shake that feeling. And as we've learned, that depression can sneak up on you, and it can be something that's happened to you in your childhood or in your growing years, or even, you know, it could be a family breakdown, it could be a relationship breakdown, financial, personal tragedy. Something eventually down the track wears you down, and it might be the silliest of little things that triggers you into this, you know, really downward spiral that can be very dangerous.
And yeah, thank you for sharing that. And it's almost it can feel like that narrative around, oh, you're all these great things and you've done all this, and therefore you shouldn't have these more challenging thoughts and more challenging experiences. And yet it's like a different language, you know, like it's just, there's this internal world that's very different to this external world. And it'd be great to hear your experience of that as it was unfolding, you know, after, as you kind of, you know, left professional football. What was the, what was the kind of story that happened in your life?
Well, it was a combination of things, as I mentioned. Like in 1983, my first ever grand final, running out on the MCG, I snapped my patella tendon 3 minutes into the game. And one never knows, you know, that's your dream, and all of a sudden you're in the back of an ambulance on one of the biggest days of my life, playing in an AFL grand final, off to hospital with a ruptured patella tendon. And you know, I weighed 84 kilos on game day. 18 days later, I left hospital weighing 63 kilos. It was a combination of not being able to get pain relief. I was allergic to morphine, and just the anxiety that, you know, and the disappointment that I'd missed out on sharing all this with my teammates. And you know, then I had I had to work really hard to get back, and it basically took me 18 months to recover from that. Firstly, to put on the weight, and put on the muscle that I'd lost, and get my confidence back in my leg again, that I could jump and do all the things I did before. And so I had a battle for probably 18 months. And in 1985, I played most of the games for Hawthorn in that year. Made All-Australian in 1985 because they picked the All-Australian team back then based on your form in state games, playing for WA or Victoria or whatever. I had a really good game in 85 and I made the All-Australian side. And on the eve of the grand final, I got, because I wasn't playing that great, my form wasn't great. I'll be the first to admit that. Leading into preliminary final, I got a call to say that my place in the side had been taken by Ken Judge, the late Ken Judge, who was a great mate of mine. He took my spot, and I had to play in the reserves final. I kicked 6 goals in the reserves grand final, in the reserves preliminary final, but Ken kicked 4 in the senior preliminary final, and he held his spot. And come the grand final, both seniors and reserves were in there, and I was hoping to get onto the bench, to make the grand final. And then I got the call from Alan Jeans to tell me that, I hadn't been selected and I'd be playing in the reserves. Of course, I was shattered. I just thought maybe I'm never going to get this chance again. And, it's my opportunity, knee injury in the first one, this. And then, I basically rang up Mum, my mother, who was a great supporter of me, and she's just a wonderful person and a beautiful human, and said to her, look, that's it. I'm coming home. My AFL days are, my VFL days are over. I'm coming back to play for Subiaco and live back in Perth, And that was disappointment speaking. And I actually told her that I'm thinking about not playing in the reserves grand final. And she said to me, and I get a bit wobbly about this because this is a major part of what happened to me. I played in the reserves, took her advice. She said to me, you're going to play and you're going to show them, that you can be a great player, and you are a great player. And I went out and kicked 8 goals and best on ground. And reserves won. The seniors got well beaten by Essendon that year. And I probably proved to myself that I could play because I played with some real vigour and real anger that I hadn't been selected, and let myself go for my marks and played a great game. And Mum was a regular churchgoer, went every Sunday to church, but she wrote me a letter to tell me how proud she was. And she went out of her way of a normal route to post the letter to me. And after she posted the letter, she was hit by a car doing about 160 kilometres an hour. He was full of alcohol and drugs. Mum was paralysed and passed away about 4 years after that. And I sort of blame myself for ringing her and telling her that stuff, because if I hadn't have done that, she wouldn't have written the letter and she would have gone her normal route to church, and she'd most likely still be with us. And that really affected me. And I dedicated the rest of my footy career to Mum and to try and make her smile and make her happy. And I did that until she died in 1990. And my career then ended as well, because I'd had an operation at the end of 89, and my knee got infected, and that get away all the cartilage, and it was bone on bone, and I basically couldn't play the way I wanted to play, so I had to retire. So that sort of ended my career, and a really major impact on me was Mum's death. And then the Sydney Swans, I went coaching the Sydney Swans, and that was just such a hard gig that nobody would have been successful. This was a VFL, AFL club that had been in Sydney for 10 years. They had no training ground, they had no support staff, they had no club. I had to tape players' ankles before training. And this is an AFL coach, and in my first job. I lasted 18 months, didn't get the support I need, or, the owners only spend half the salary cap. So I was never going to be successful. But when I got sacked there, I was just sort of left. I felt the footy world had abandoned me, and that I was an ugly duckling. I couldn't find work anywhere. We returned to Western Australia, and I couldn't find work. It just seemed that I felt that everybody and everything had just abandoned me, and I was by myself and family. And it got to the point where I had to line up for unemployment. And in that queue of unemployment, answering all of these questions, I thought to myself, I've done all this stuff and this is what it's come to, you know, my family is better off without me. And they're the immediate thoughts that went through my mind. I left the unemployment, drove to the end of South Wharf at Fremantle, wrote a letter to my family. This is how quickly it can happen. And told them I'm sorry, they'll be better off without me. Left the keys and the letter in the car, went out to the end of the wharf, took my shoes off, and I was going to swim until I couldn't swim anymore. And I stood up about 4 or 5 times to dive in and swim, and some things held me back, and I think Mum had a big say in it. I think she was watching over me, and obviously my 2 children were there as well, and in my thoughts. And so I drove home, and that was the time I showed the letter to my wife Annette, and broke down really badly, and went to the GP, and we had a meeting and a doctor, and it was he suggested I speak to a psychologist and tell my story and see. And it took me probably 5 years of doing that and finding the right psychologist to talk to, who I felt a connection with. And this is really important for people out there. If you're feeling desperately unhappy and you're in this bad space where you just can't feel that you're any good to anybody, or your touch is useless, and people are going to be better off without you, that's the time to start to talk, because these bad thoughts can just lead to what happened to me. And I'm sure that case with many of people that actually, take their own lives. It just comes upon you that this is what you're going to do. And, you've got to be aware of your feelings and take that on board, and make sure you speak to someone, whether it is your wife. And that was the first person I told how desperately unhappy I was and what I had thought about doing. And, we got the help, and eventually I found the right person and the right medication for me. I continued to take those medications, adjusted every now and then. And, probably 2 times a year, I still see my psychologist and talk to him and learn the skills to learn to live with it. And so that's basically the story of what happened to me.
What an incredible story to share. Thank you for that. And also, I'm so glad that you were able to find that help, with the support of your wife. It'd be great to understand that process for you. Like, did you see a few psychologists first, or whether, what was it to find that right one? What was that like for you to get the right team of support around you?
Yeah, look, I had great support from Annette, my wife, and, my family and close friends who were very concerned about my welfare. As it happened, not that long after, probably a month or another month or so, I found a good job, and, started to, be open to going out and meeting people and, friends and family. Whereas before I didn't want to do anything. I found it hard to get out of bed. Going for a family barbecue or barbecue with friends was just something I just wouldn't do. So shying away from any contact with people. And so it was a slow, gradual process for me, but the biggest part was understanding my feelings and doing things like doing some exercise and finding happiness again and pleasure in doing things I enjoyed, like playing golf or fishing, and playing with the kids, and, just finding, that life is good again, and that was a bit self-taught, but with the help of psychologists, just learning to understand your own feelings and how you're feeling, and people around you may be seeing you withdraw, and then asking, are you okay? You know, and then maybe there was something on your mind that, you know, or something was worrying you that you just was holding in and it was making you withdraw. All those sort of things I learned, and then eventually I found the right psychologist, and you know, he was amazing in the connection we had, and she still is today. So we still chat, and she still checks in on me, and it's great.
Do you think that you know, in the profession that you've had, I mean, coming to, you know, into your kind of 30s or late 30s and getting that support, then do you think that that support is there for people that are younger to learn what kind of team of help that they need early, or do you think there needs to be something done there to help people as you were in your kind of career?
Well, as I said, there was very little support and very little knowledge of mental, which can take a number of forms, be it depression, whatever it is. But you know, these things are far more publicised now, and you know, it's far more out there in society. That, and I think the biggest factor is probably men are the worst because they don't talk as much as women. Women are quite good at sharing thoughts with each other, but men tend to have always thought, I think, that it's weakness, illness, it's a weak up and get over it, you know, and that was always the attitude. And I think society's now matured to the point where we understand that mental illness is definitely an illness, and if it's not treated and if you ignore it, it's very hard to come back from it, and you'll live a very unhappy life. And it's hard to explain that, but those who have got depression and had depression and found themselves in a very dark space, it's a terrible way to try and live your life. And so understanding that is becoming far more acceptable out there in society, and society sort of understands now that we've got to ask the question, or, you know, be prepared to ask the question to a family member or a friend if you see them, you know, not the normal self. Just ask the question, are you okay? You know, it's a great little 3-word thing that you can do. Just ask the question, are you okay? You know, is there something I can do? Do you want to have a talk? That's far more out there now than what it is, but still a long way to go in understanding mental health and triggers, you know, that can bring it on. And it could be, you know, injury, trauma, like we've seen in a few footballers. Unfortunately, we saw Danny Frawley and Shane Tuck. And, you know, Shane was the son of Michael, who I played footy with. And that really brought it home to me that, you know, this illness is still out there in big numbers. And particularly after COVID, the years that we've had with this, businesses lost, people losing their jobs, their livelihoods. I think we're going to need to be on our game in promoting this mental health awareness as we go forward, because I think a lot of people, young and older, are going to be, you know, suffering from this. And if we can just get the message out there for people to talk and people to care for one another and just ask those questions, and for the individuals themselves to understand that feeling unhappy every day, every moment of every day, that's not that. It probably means you have got some sort of underlying issue that needs to be resolved. And by talking to people and fight the right medication, you can live happy and prosperous life like I'm doing now.
Do you think, I mean, the fact that you've very bravely shared your story with people, how has it changed the kind of nature and tenor of conversations that you have with your kind of friends and family or people that, you know, are in the sport? Have you had any kind of experiences of them referencing that, or like, you know, kind of coming to you as a person to talk about these more kind of challenging inner world issues?
Not so much. I've done a few talks like I'm doing with you today, and I've done a thing for the AFL, Tackle Your Feelings. That was a program that I think they rolled out to a lot of the footy clubs and clubs to have an awareness about around mental health and things to be aware of, and to consider when if you're feeling different or you're feeling unhappy, etc. And yeah, so look, I'm just starting this journey of trying, I want to share the message, finding the right platforms to do that, from either a corporate workforce point of view or communities or sporting clubs or whatever. It's something that I'd like to do, and hopefully can spread the message that if somebody reaches out, even you affect one person who maybe can identify with the story, with the message, and reaches out and seeks help, then it's all worthwhile.
It is, and I think the fact that just to share the depths of what you went through and then to highlight how there is hope, if you can find support and the right kind of support, and that it does take time, it took you sort of 5 years to get there, to build the right team around you to help, bring peace into your life. But it does take that help, it does take kind of reaching out to get that help. If you had, one kind of final thought or reflection on, what you'd like to see across the system in terms of improvement in the mental health system, what would it be? What would you like to see?
Look, it's a hard one, Chris, because a lot of it comes down to the individual, that first step to actually ask for help, or to admit that, they have a problem, or there's something wrong, they don't understand why. And this is a part about mental illness. People don't understand why. And it can be all sorts of triggers that can bring on this illness. And so I guess it's the awareness. And I think the governments, federal governments, probably have to make a bigger contribution towards, the awareness around mental health, and how it can affect people. And mental health can actually change personality, and I found that it definitely, I was a happy, outgoing person, became withdrawn, angry with life, and sad with life person, and that was complete opposite to what I was. And so this is the awareness that we've got to get out there, and probably programs, whether it becomes school programs or educational programs around this. I'm not sure, but it probably needs more financial support from government, councils, because everybody's affected by it. So that's probably the biggest thing, and that's why I'm speaking out and trying to, to help get this awareness out there, that it is out there. It's not a weakness. It's an illness. You can get over it. You can live a health and be happy again, and that's the main thing.
Gary, thanks so much for sharing your story and lending it to the bigger vision of a better mental health system. Really appreciate your time, and looking forward to sharing our chat today with our supporters. Appreciate it.
No, thank you, Chris.